Hey guys, and welcome back to more Entitled People stories. Let's check out some more Reddit posts, so be sure to like and subscribe and let's get right into it. It's not a small animal. This is my niece's story, but she said I could post it here. Approximately 15 years ago, she was living in Florida. She was separated from her husband, waiting for the divorce to be final. She had 2 young children, and her soon-to-be ex, Kevin, would come weekly to visit the children. This was code for eating her food, washing his clothes, sleeping on the couch, and yelling at the kids for bothering him. She kept humoring him and letting him do this because she was waiting for the papers to be finalized, and did not want him to delay things by being an ass. They were set to sign the papers in less than 2 weeks, and he came to visit again. The kids were down for their naps and she was cleaning in the back of the house. She came back out to find that Kevin had eaten the food she had set out for them to have for dinner. He made a big mess in the kitchen and was now asleep on her couch. She was pissed, but knew that confronting him directly would not accomplish anything, other than possibly delay her divorce. So she took a deep breath and started to straighten up the kitchen. She was putting things back in the refrigerator when she saw a package of stew beef. She had forgotten about it and it was no longer safe to eat. She finished cleaning up and went outside to get some fresh air when she got a good look at Kevin's car. He had been in some sort of accident, and the metal above the wheel well was torn open. That was the light bulb moment. She went inside and got the trash to throw it away. She went outside and set the bag on the ground next to the trash can, and took out the package of stew beef. She then grabbed a pair of garden gloves and carefully put all the rotting meat inside the hole above the wheel well. Then she sat back and waited. Oh, I should probably mention that it was the end of July when she did this. When Kevin came back to visit the kids, you could smell the rotting meat from 25 feet away from the car. While the kids were taking their naps, she sat and looked out the window. Her view was of Kevin in the driveway tearing his car apart, trying to find the source of the smell. When he came back a few days later, she insisted that he parked down the street from the house due to the smell. He told her that he did not know what it was, and that he had stopped on the side of the road multiple times to throw up due to the smell. It took another week before he found the source of the smell. Kevin told her that a small animal must have crawled in there and died. To this day, he still has no idea that she did it. Entitled parent forces child to go to school and gives entire year group COVID. My old school was half boarding, half day, and if you boarded, you were allowed to go home on Sunday evenings, sleep the night, and come back the next morning. The entitled kid was heavily disliked, so much so that one guy made friends with him out of pity. Every year, the year 7s would go to France. They would stay at an activity center with archery, a massive playing field, and so much more. Every year, when the previous year got back, they would tell you how fun it was, but I will get into more detail on that later. This was around 2 weeks after COVID officially entered the UK, so people were already high-strung, but not the entitled father. Entitled kid's dad was very entitled. He was a brain surgeon, so rich as hell. This is why I think entitled kid was so entitled. To clarify, his mom was great. It was solely his dad who was entitled. His dad never came to visit him, only his mom who had divorced the dad many years prior. On to the story. As I said, the French trip was highly anticipated, but the problem started when the entitled father forced his son to go to school that Monday morning, even though entitled kid said he felt ill. Our matron kept tabs on him. That night, just before she took his temperature, he put cold water in his ears so that the reading would be acceptable. Everyone woke up early the following morning, exited, and were ready to go. Entitled kids seemed fine most of the way there, so no one was worried. But that night, the first person became ill. Due to the illness, the other kid, who I'll call Louis, missed most of his activities. But unfortunately, he wasn't the only one. The next day, 2 more fell ill, and the day after, 5 more. It was worrying, but we continued with the whole trip, and got back to the UK a few days before France closed its borders due to COVID. When we got back, all of our parents were there waiting for us. None thought much of it. The next day, I got in slightly earlier than everybody else, and waited for the rest of my year to come. But lo and behold, my entire year, save 4 other people, had called in with COVID. Throughout the day, the last of my year were sent home sick. I was last, but only because I lived the furthest away. It was good that they sent us away too, because that night I ran a high fever, and for the next 2 days I felt as if I had been hit by a truck. I didn't actually witness this last part, but according to the entitled kid's pity friend, the headmaster and entitled parent got into a massive shouting match over how he should have kept entitled kid at home if he was ill. In addition, the headmaster found out about entitled kid putting water in his ears, and how he should know not to do that. Apparently, Entitled Kid was on really thin ice now, but his father thought he could do no wrong. Unfortunately, Entitled Kid was not expelled, though I'm pretty sure that's because his father was shoving money down the throat of the school to keep it hush-hush. Sorry this didn't have a big climactic ending, but I just wanted to share it. Yeah, the thing about this is that if this had happened before the pandemic, this type of thing would still be inconsiderate as hell, which really just makes it that much worse that they did that in the current situation. Entitled Woman thought it was perfectly fine to block my driveway. I woke up this morning at about 7 a.m. checking my outside cameras as usual, when I'm greeted by the infuriating sight of a newish gray Toyota sedan firmly blocking my driveway. Even though it is frigid by California standards, I go outside to see if the person was inside and about to move, so I hopefully wouldn't have to escalate things. They were predictably not inside, so I called parking enforcement. It took them an hour and a half to get here, but apparently the person who blocked me in was in no rush. Thankfully, the parking enforcement officer was very nice. My mother and I handed over our IDs to prove we lived here, her house in front, mine in back, and he asked us if we wanted the car towed. I told him whatever gets it out of here. He told us to have a good day, and we went inside to watch the show from my security camera. The tow truck guy shows up, and him and the other officer conversate. Now at the unholy racket the tow truck guy was making, the very loud conversation they were having, and the car alarm going off, you'd think this person would come skipping down the street any minute, right? Nope. It wasn't until the tow truck guy and the officer were about to drive away that this older woman, late 50s maybe, makes her way down the street, seemingly no concern on her part asking why her car was about to be hauled off. The way she was gesturing and pointing wildly, you'd think we did her a serious wrong. The officer very nicely pointed out, no less than 5 times, that she was blocking our driveway. She seemed to not comprehend that it was against the law, even after he showed her the pictures he took of her car, while he literally spelled it out for her. You could hear him saying, "Here's the driveway, here's the property, and here's your car. You are blocking it." She tried to argue with the tow truck guy about getting her car back, but he did that shrug that clearly said, "Well, it's on the hook already. You'll have to pay." So she handed her card over, while throwing our house dirty looks, like she expected us to come out and berate her. No need. These guys were doing a bang-up job already. The kicker is, she did not even have the car keys. This woman apparently handed them off to a relative, so she was obviously planning on leaving the car there all day. So she had to go all the way back to her house, which was pretty far down the street because it took her a while, to get a spare key. In that time, an extremely nosy neighbor of ours across the street decided to stick her nose where it didn't belong, asking the men why the woman was getting towed, even though she saw her blocking us. The tow truck guy, awesome dude, literally gestured at our driveway saying they couldn't even get out, with that incredulous tone of voice that you only reserve for slow-witted ones. In the end, she had to pay to get her car back. Her and the neighbors had a long talk, gesturing in our direction, while conversing in snooty voices like anybody gave a damn. And the best part? She got to take home a nice present, in the form of a ticket on her windshield. You know, she might have acted totally oblivious about this, but I feel like it might be one of those situations where people know that they're in the wrong, so they just try to feign ignorance, hoping that it'll get them off the hook. But in this case, it didn't work. Karen tries to steal part of my yard. In 1996, my husband and I bought a brand new home in Georgia, in a development called Fox Ridge. We had only lived here for about 2 months, and my boys and I were out in the yard planting shrubs and flowers and ground cover. My property still had all the survey stakes and flags still up, because we were going to build a fence, and wanted to make sure we were within our property boundaries. The property was an oddly shaped quarter-acre, with a 10-foot wide, 6-foot deep drainage swale, separating us from our neighbors on the right. Unfortunately, that drainage ditch side required rocks to reinforce it, to keep it from crumbling in heavy rains. So we had large, round river rocks that weighed around a pound each at strategic places, such as corners to bolster it up. The worst spot was the front corner that faced the road. Every time it rained, the Georgia clay would crumble. The plan was to use some quick-set concrete to keep the rocks that were stacked from falling, and to plant mossy plants in between rocks to pretty it up, until we could afford to construct a better retaining wall. I had gone in the house for drinks and snacks for me and my boys, when my oldest son ran in to tell me some lady was stealing our yard. I go out, and sure enough, there she was, Karen, knocking down my wall and stealing my rocks. "Excuse me, what do you think you're doing?" I ask. "I am taking these rocks for my garden," said Karen. "No, you're not." "Yes, I am. You are on my property and those are my rocks, so you are trespassing and stealing." "No, I'm not. The builder gave me permission to take these rocks." "Lady, this is my house. I bought it. The builder can't give you permission to come on my property and take rocks that I purchased. The rocks are holding up the corner of my property." "It's not your property. Go mind your business." "Do you know what survey stakes are?" I asked, walking towards her to see how much damage she was doing. "I'm not stupid, of course I do." Karen's getting really angry now and red-faced. "So if you know what property boundary markers look like, then you can plainly tell you were standing inside of mine, and you are on my property. Drop the rock and return all the ones you just stole off my property. Don't make me call the cops." At this point, Karen tells me to f*** off. Then she tells me to back off, and raises a rock in a threatening manner like she's going to hit me with it. I told her I was going to f*** up her day and start down the hill towards her. I yelled back to my oldest son to bring me the cordless phone so I could call the police. Karen then realized I wasn't playing, and drops the rock she just picked up. I then asked, "Do you even f***ing live in this development?" "I live here, and I am going to tell my husband how you spoke to me." "Really?" I ask. "He is Tech Staff Sergeant Mr. Karen, and I know your husband is active duty too, so you will be sorry." "Great, now I know his name, and I plan to make a complaint that his wife came to my house, destroyed my property, tried to steal my property, and threatened me in front of my kids. Have a good day, you stupid cow." At that point, stupid cow/Karen gets in her minivan and drove off. She destroyed hours of work. When my husband got home, the boys told him how the screaming lady tried to steal our yard, and mom called her a stupid cow and other bad words they weren't allowed to say. My husband just gives me the look, so I explain what happened, and he knew her husband, so he got to go speak with him at work. That weekend, Mr. Staff Sergeant Karen came over to help my husband replace the rocks Karen ripped out, to keep the peace, and so not to have an incident filed at work. And no, Karen never darkened my door for the rest of the 7 years I lived in that house. Nothing you can do about stolen food? Okay. Mandatory English is not my first language. Over 15 years ago, my husband was a nurse technician at a private hospital in a small town in Brazil. At the hospital, there was a constant problem with food being stolen from the employees' fridge. There were constant complaints, but the administration would just ignore them. One day my husband brought a container of cream cheese, worth 2 reals, which is about 50 cents, put it in the fridge, and when his break came, he saw it missing. He went to HR to report the theft, and they told him that since it was not hospital property, there was nothing they could do. My husband just said, "Is that so?" turned around and left. He went to the phone and called the cops, asking them to come because there was a theft. He didn't tell them what was stolen. Now, private hospitals in Brazil have a big thing about image. So when 2 cop cars arrived at the front of the hospital, everyone, from patients, employees, HR, and even the top administration came to see what was going on. One of the cops that arrived ended up being one of my husband's uncles, so he just went straight to him to ask what happened. My husband, with the most serious expression, just told him, loud enough for everyone to hear, that he wanted to make an official report that someone stole his 50-cent container of cream cheese. There was a general silence before his uncle asked, "Are you serious? If I knew this was about a 50-cent container of cream cheese, we would not have come, and would have told you to go to the station to make the report if you wanted." My husband just answered with a smile, "I know, that is why I did not say what was stolen, and now you have to make the report," which he did. Obviously, the police wouldn't do anything about it. But because of the whole circus that my husband created, the next week the hospital installed a camera right in front of the employee's fridge, and the food theft finally stopped. Well, thanks for watching, guys. I appreciate it. Be sure to hit that like button and also subscribe if you haven't already. So take care, everyone, and until next time.